¿No hay forma de ver la sala? Ahora, Elena. Let's sit down. Let's take our seats. Thank you. Let's sit down. So we're gonna start. Please take your seats. Shut the door. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, dear friends. It's such a pleasure to see you all together. We want to say hello on behalf of the Executive Confederal Committee to all the delegates in this 12th Confederal Congress. We want to greet all our guests, national and international guests. Once the leaders come up here, you will be welcomed as you should be. We would like also to say hello to all the members who are following us by streaming and to all those who are online to follow our Congress. Welcome to you all to the 12th Confederal Congress of the USO. As you know, we are committed to having a sustainable Congress. We have got rid of paper. So you need the USO app to work during this Congress. You should have it updated on your mobile device. And we have set up at the entrance of the room machines where you can leave your cans and bottles. If you have a problem with the app, please tell the order service and they will help you. All the votes are going to take place digitally, except for the first one, which will be a raised hand vote for the election of the chairs. So thank you very much to all those of USO who have been making so many efforts to make sure it all runs smoothly. Thank you very much to the technical service and to the staff of the Palace of Congresses. Thank you. So we have all had our vaccines and we will all comply with the health recommendations. I'm not going to repeat them. We all know them by now. So now I suggest you should listen for 1.5 minutes, just the time you need to watch a video now. Our delegates are those who make the decisions. Autonomy. 94% of our budget come from our own resources. That's what makes us strong. Solidarity. Our Resistance and Solidarity Fund supports the fights of our members. Pluralism. We're open-minded. We accept differences, provided we pursue the same goal: freedom and equality of opportunities. Commitment. We're committed to our values, to the values that are represented by USO, and we give everything to those values. Efficiency. Always ready. To fight next to the workers, to respond to their needs as they deserve. So you've read that we're financed by our own resources, and we have the Resistance and Solidarity Fund with the same goal, the equality of opportunities. We're definitely committed to implementing the values of USO. I'm going to move on to the 12th Confederal Congress. As the regulation states, we have 125 people. So we have in total 250 people, delegates, and who have a right to vote. The quorum is above the 2/3. We have more than 130. So we can have this Congress. This Congress will be valid. Let's move on to the election of the chairing table proposed by the Confederal Congress. So we will have Maria Recuero Sanchez to the presidency, Noelia Torres Fernández will be on the table, Ana Belén Palacios Cantarero, y Margarita Mudaraste, responsible for the reports. So are you in favor of the proposal of chairing table for this Congress? Abstentions? So approved. You can come and sit at the table. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank all the delegates and welcome all the delegates taking part in this 12th Confederal Congress, which is starting now. I would first of all thank you for having trusted this chairing table to chair the 3 days of our Congress. We hope we'll not disappoint you. We'll do it as best we can with your help, with your cooperation, and we rely on your patience. It will certainly be useful at some point. We cannot start this Congress without remembering and mentioning the war that is taking place, the invasion of Ukraine, where thousands and thousands of innocent people died, and we thought it was impossible to see such a war in the 21st century. So, for us, it is very clear that we have to say no to the war. We have to say no to just any type of violence or any type of submission, sorry, because dictatorships have never been good. So, third, dear colleagues, I would like to thank all those who have accepted our invitation to follow this USO Congress. Those of you who are with us physically, those who are following the Congress online, and those of you who've sent us messages of solidarity. This is the first Congress we're going to have in a digital format, and the board, the chairing table, will tell you how to proceed. So your presence makes us stronger, and for us, it means recognition, and it shows that our organization is important for the social fabric, the economic and fabric, and the entrepreneurship of our country. So thank you very much for your presence, whatever the nature of your presence. I would like to take this opportunity to greet all our trade union colleagues outside of our borders who are following us too, because thanks to the live broadcast of our digital Congress. So let's start this 12th Confederal Congress by reading the letter written by the President of our government, Mr. Pedro Sanchez. Dear Secretary General, I thank you very much for inviting me to participate in the opening of the 12th Congress of USO that will take place at the end of March in Granada. The USO is the third class trade union of our country, and I'm totally aware of the importance of your work in the international trade union bodies such as ETUC, ITUC, TUAC, and, well, before the OECD. It would be an honor to be able to respond, to accept your invitation. But the President won't be able to be with you because of our very tight agenda. But I would like to say how grateful I am for your work in defending decent working conditions for all the workers, and I wish you success in the celebration of your 12th Confederal Congress. Now we will move on to 1 minute of silence in memory of all our colleagues, delegates, and members who have left us during these last 4 years. And we will also keep a minute's silence in the name of all the people, for all the people who died during the pandemic.
Ahora, compañeros y compañeras, vamos a dar la palabra al señor Jesús Payán, coordinador general de la USO y
Dear
Andalucía,
friends, we are
para
going to
que
give
os
the floor to
dedique
Jesus
la
Payan,
bienvenida a su tierra y os
coordinator of
dedique un
USO
saludo
Andalucía, for him to welcome
afectuoso.
you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Dear friends, I'm going to get the 500 pages I wrote out now. No, it's a lie, it's a joke. I only wrote 450 pages. So before anything else, I would like to welcome you, to welcome the delegates and the guests to this 12th Confederal Congress of USO. We are very happy to have the opportunity to celebrate this Congress, to hold this Congress in Andalusia, especially in Granada. This city of Granada has a huge cultural wealth, historical wealth, thanks to the different cultures that have lived here. So if you take a walk in the streets of our cities, you will see a number of buildings that cannot leave you indifferent. I'm not speaking only about the bars. So we would like to thank particularly the Confederal Executive Committee and the Confederal Council, which has approved the holding of this 12th Congress in Granada. So we're very happy to have it here. Andalusia, our land, well, you won't have time to visit it in 3 days. We have so many assets, but we also have liabilities. Unhappily, we are the first autonomous community in the field of unemployment. We're the autonomous community with the highest level of unemployment. More than 800,000 people, many of which are women, are unemployed in Andalusia. This shortcoming of our community is also reflected in the job creation process. Our community lacks infrastructure. In 2022, there are provinces of our autonomous community of Andalusia which do not have any roads or railroads. There is an industrial fabric that could be powerful, but it is not. It must be improved. There is a clear lack of investments in sciences and technologies, especially given the capacity that our community has. Because our community is not only flamenco, guitar playing and napping, it's also a hard-working community. And we have raw material, we have farming, we have cattle breeding, we have mining resources, but well, these sectors could create many more jobs if we could also control the added value that could be created by the processing of the production of those sectors. But it's not the case. On the negative side, we have pollution, problems of pollution caused by the mining companies, for example, which have their headquarters outside our country, which means that they don't even pay their taxes in our country. So we have the resources. In the climate, the weather in our autonomous community in those difficult times, the difficult times we're living now, the climate um, would be ideal to invest in renewable energies. We have hydropower, we have the sun, and we're not taking these opportunities of developing the renewables. So I'm not going to keep brushing this dark picture, but I just wanted to mention a few of our shortcomings. We are the first territorial union of USO, also with the highest number of members. It means a lot of work. Not the work of the committee I'm responsible for, but people, work carried out by the people of the trade union and all the people of a community who are working on behalf of the union and the federations we represent. The number of members in our country has been growing steadily, despite the pandemic, despite the crisis. But we believe that we are in a good time for our trade union in Andalusia. This is the right time for us to take the reins of our destiny as an independent and efficient trade union, which is our trade union is more than 60 years old. This is our history, and we need to know our history. Because when the people don't know their history, their culture, it's like a tree without roots. It is our duty to know our history, the history of our country, the history of trade unionism in our country. So I've been responsible for trade union organization or recruitment since 1985. And I have taken part in all the Confederal Congresses that have been held by our organization. As you may understand, this one is the most important one because this Congress is taking place in Andalusia and in Granada. And this Congress, I'm here in this Congress as leader of USO Andalusia. USO Andalusia has been going through difficult times, but we've been able to overcome those difficulties, to overcome those challenges. And this Congress will mark the starting point of a new process. And during the last term of 2022, we'll have our regional Congress. And this Congress paves the way for our regional Congress. So we believe that the proposals, the presentations, the amendments, all the texts of this Congress will be different because our trade union organization has to adapt to the new situation we are living, the new regulatory situation, health situation, the new developments in sciences and technologies, and we have to adapt to this situation as well.
We also have to have no complex whatsoever in being very present in our society with our own political point of view. No complexes, but rather bringing forward proposals to improve our society, a fairer and more solidary society. And we hope that our organization be reinforced in favor of all workers, regardless of their sector, their administration, their federation, that all the same to us. Because the important thing is our common work, the trade union work. It is true that the media reproach us, they say that we are good for nothings and so on and so forth. This is some of the little games that some media play. We have to continue and will continue working together for the working people, trade unions and other organizations, many of which are here represented. That is the way that our trade union has to work, without any complexes whatsoever. Article 7 of our constitution in Spain makes it very clear, and there is no fraud here. Federico Garcia Lorca used to say that the worst of feelings is the feeling of death hope. Well, in our trade union, hope is alive. We are building a better future. This is our hope. That's why we work in USO, Andalusia, USO in general, to continue working in favor of the working class and society as a whole, so that we all together we get a better, fairer, solidary and sustainable world. Thank you very much. Let us hear José Agustín Fernández, Secretary General of the Autonomous Employment of the Junta de Andalucía, which in the name of the Andalusian Congress will address us. José Agustín, you have the floor. Good afternoon. Let me begin by thanking you for the invitation to take part in this Confederal Congress. I know that the Congress was going to be carried out a few months ago, but for the reasons we all know, it had to be postponed. But of course, this Congress is even more important today, because this is a symbol of going back to certain normal life. You can see our faces, we can shake hands. It symbolizes a sort of return to some sort of normality. And starting from life, and including the economy and work as well. So congratulations, because I think that you have a very good motto for your Congress, building the future. Because if there is a return, it's also a return to the future, to what we want to be. Building the future is a proposal, is an intention to which as Andalusian government we join. Granada is a historical city, a melting pot of different cultures, a mixer of living together generations after generations throughout history. Spanish is a social state and legal state, says that our constitution. And in Article 7, it recognizes the important role of trade unions, workers, and associations of employers in the defense and promotion of economic and social interest of the members. And this is a role even more important today than ever. The 2 years of pandemic with all the obstacles and difficulties, and something new indeed. We did not know that in recent history, which made all this very difficult to manage. and impacted all issues in life, health, of course, but also social, personal, educational dimensions, economic, labor conditions. I'm touching wood that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're letting that behind, and yet new problems arise. For instance, the war in Ukraine, the increase in energy costs, fuel, strikes, all this has a negative impact on our economy. So we have more than 100,000 requests for help. In 2 months, over 100,000 entered, and overall was 400,000 people in Andalusia are affected by this. And then we had, of course, those temporary work contracts that the new labor reformed has allowed, but it has helped throughout the pandemic to avoid even greater difficulties, even greater chaos, in which many other companies would have gone bankrupt. So now, little by little, things seem to be improving, and all of a sudden we have the impact of the war. Let us hope that in the we think, we're afraid that in the coming weeks that impact will be negative. The employment data in Andalusia in 2021, there were 100,000 new jobs or posts. However, the recent impact means that things have to continue improving. We have to manage also the European funds that are going to reach us through true dialogue and efficient governance. And we have to solve long-term issues, not just the short-term ones. And for that is so important your motto, building the future. It's the only way to progress and improve. We have to build a future by facing new technology challenges, which have changed society, especially this last 2 years, where because of the lockdowns, so on and so forth, things have accelerated. But of course, in 2030, it's calculated that about 40 to 60 types of job will be new, different from today's. So we have to face those changes. And through social dialogue and peace, we can improve the economic perspectives. The Junta of Andalusia, the government of Andalusia, convinced that dialogue is both possible and necessary in order to ensure good working opportunities and good prospects. Debate enriches us. This Congress is very important, where there will be debates, conversations, new status, issues tackled like ecological transition, unemployment, young people's situation, the vulnerable groups, pension reform. So I congratulate you for this Congress. And I wish you all the best, all success, and I'm sure that the conclusions will enrich us all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Agustín González. Susana Rivas, in charge of citizens and citizens' rights in Andalusia. Good afternoon. Warm greetings to all of you. And now we have a woman chairperson. In my name and the name of Gonzalo, the Secretary General, we thank you for the invitation for this 12th Confederal Congress. It's a good opportunity to meet up with good friends and to listen to your proposals to improve the lives of citizens and workers. As the chairwoman said, we have to support the Ukrainian people and refugees. Millions of people are refugees in this last 30 days, fleeing an unjustified war and struggling for independence and essential rights. Some steps have been taken, for instance, the energy agreement between Spain and Portugal, for Spain and Portugal in Europe, which is very important for all our families here in our country. There are many crises that we've tackled in the last years. Well, the COVID virus, Omicron, and now Ukraine war in Europe. So many crises that we have to tackle in the past, pandemics, changes in the climate, volcanic eruptions, and this terrible tragedy of the war in Ukraine. But of course, we also have economic crises that are concurrent with those other ones, crises that hit worse the most disadvantaged people. That is why it's so important that all trade unions participate, struggling and working together to improve the situation of the most disadvantaged groups. We have to struggle in trade unions, political parties, and so on and so forth, to stop the closure of educational centers here in Andalusia. We have to struggle so that we can tackle the problem of low birth rates and to promote education in Andalusia. And we have to change the funding system of public universities so that our young can go on to work and study in good conditions. To struggle against cuts in healthcare and services, which, remember, they were the first line during the COVID pandemic lockdowns. We have to recognize their work and help them. We could go on speaking about these issues, but I'll be brief. And in any case, the most important thing will be the conclusions and resolutions of this Congress. I'll limit myself to say the following. Let us work together, united, building the future, united to reach consensus, and in that way to bring forward improvement solutions, responses, to try and solve the problems, the daily problems that face people, and to avoid cuts in our rights as workers. So let me finish also thanking the name of our General Secretary and all of us, invitation to take part in your Congress. And we hope that you'll have all the successor you deserve, and you can count with us in this united effort to improve life, and not just in Andalusia, of course, of all the Spanish people and the rest of the world too. Thank you very much, Susana Rivas. We would like to thank Don Jose Garcia, his presence, representing the Granada MPs. Elvira Rodriguez, Vice Secretary, General Vice Secretary of AP. Yes, good afternoon. And congratulations for this Congress, which had to be postponed because of the pandemic. But thank goodness we have now been able to be together. And thank you, I repeat, for the invitation. Double thanks, in fact. Especially because I come from Madrid, and it's a very good reason to visit this beautiful city of Granada. I represent my own party, the PP, the Popular Party, which wanted to be present in this meeting. Congress are important because of the debates and conversations and resolutions and statutes changes. But Congress is a forum to meet in a good way, in a relaxed way. But of course, a Congress is a stepping stone also for the future, as your motto makes clear, building the future. The Popular Party is aware of that. This weekend we'll also have an important Congress not so far from here in Seville, which is also a new starting point for our party. The times are difficult. In this century, we've had 3 great crises, very different ones, but with a common denominator, namely the negative impact on employment and the economy, direct or indirectly speaking. The financial crisis of 2008, the pandemic, and now something that we thought could not happen in the 21st century, an invasion, a war in Europe, given scenes that look very much like the Second World Wars. A war that is not just local because it has worldwide effects, especially concerning, for instance, raw materials in energy or grains, wheat, and others. International trade and international economy has been trying to be efficient in the last few years, and the world became more specialized, and there were some of monopolies that we'll have to rethink. The pandemic and now the war has taught us that that type of politics or policy leads to problems. Because we require now strategic reserves to face this crisis, to reduce risks. If we had been more autonomous, we'll have fewer problems nowadays. And we'll have to change the chip, as it were, because the world is changing very fast. We cannot just close the stable doors when the horse has bolted. It's a big challenge to adjust to new situations, a challenge shared by the political parties and the governments when we take our own responsibilities.
Nobody should be left behind if we do things with responsibility. And we, the trade unions, we have a very important role to play. We have to make sure what we do in the short run is also compatible with the long-term needs. And also the political parties have their own responsibilities. And I'm not even mentioning the government's responsibilities, which I'm not going to mention, if you allow me. I have to stick to the same timetable, and I still have to tell you that I wish you courage and a lot of success during those days. It's not going to be easy what we have to do in the future, but it is going to be very rewarding, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Almeida. Could you please switch your mobile phones off? Thank you. Now we are going to watch a video that Sharon Burrow has recorded for us. Sharon Burrow is the General Secretary of ITUC.
USO. Delegates, we know this is an important Congress. You have been incredibly influential. The Spanish trade unions have seen legal changes that have increased social protection, have provided protections for workers who are in remote or telework, and indeed we've seen raises in wages. But we also know that you have an ambition for further laws to democratise the trade union freedoms, the rights of workers, and of course the society. And I wish you well. We know we are living in a very difficult time. People have lost hope, they're feeling despair, and therefore the trust in democracy itself is a problem. But we're also living in a global context where increasing conflict is making people very anxious, where unemployment is not secure. We know the labour force is broken. We know 60% of our brothers and sisters globally are working informally, and that's growing in all our societies. And even the 40% with some form of social contract or contract of employment, a third of those are insecure. And women have been the great victims of the COVID-19 pandemic. $800 million lost in income. That's the combined GDP of some 98 countries. And of course, of people who've dropped out of the labour market, it's been the majority of women. But also women are overrepresented in the insecure, the precarious, the informal jobs. And we are at risk again of losing a generation of young workers who feel the security of indeed an employment contract that guarantees them fundamental rights, a minimum living wage, the right to bargain collectively, and of course comprehensive social protection. So we have work to do. The way the global movement frames that is we demand a new social contract. We do that because we see the impact of the destruction of the social contract. And now with the resulting areas of convergent crisis, it's even more urgent. With inequality at historic levels, with indeed the climate emergency and the challenge of just transition, and of course with the global health crisis, we know that a social contract is vital if we're going to stabilise a common sense of security. So we have 5 key demands. You know what they are: jobs, jobs and jobs. Climate-friendly jobs with just transition, decent work. And we have got the UN to support now a global accelerator on jobs and indeed our third demand, which is universal social protection. We are absolutely appalled by the fact that more than 60% of the world's people don't have universal social protection or adequate amounts of social protection. So we've demanded an international fund, a global fund, for the poorest of our countries. So fighting for jobs and social protection in our own countries is vital, but also indeed across the world. The second demand is indeed rights, because fundamental rights are everything. We want fundamental rights. We want it to include the promise of the Centenary Declaration with occupational health and safety. And with your support, we hope to see occupational health and safety recognised as a fundamental right at the ILO conference in June. The fourth demand is indeed equality. Equality of income with minimum living wages, evidence-based on what it takes for a person to live and raise a family, but also collective bargaining, strengthened collective bargaining, the heart of shared prosperity. But we want equality of gender and equality of race as well. And our fifth demand is inclusion. It, of course, is the common security of all of those demands: jobs, climate-friendly jobs, just transition, rights, social protection and equality. But it's more than that. It's also a framework for the way in which we share prosperity and realise the Sustainable Development Goals, how we return to full employment and give people hope of the security of decent work for the future. But it's also about conflict, and it's about realising the Paris Climate Agreement. If we don't have a stable planet, if we don't have a social contract, if we don't have an inclusive future that actually mitigates the threat of conflict and war, then indeed we don't have the conditions for rebuilding trust in democracy. I wish you well. This Congress is really important. I wish I could be there to listen to your debates, but I look forward to seeing the outcomes of this important meeting. Solidarity.
Let's continue with a few words from the Secretary General of ETUC, Luca Vicentini. Dear friends, it's a great pleasure for me to be able to talk to the 12th Congress of the USO. I would like to thank Joaquin Perez da Silva for his support and the fruitful cooperation of USO with ETUC and for its strong European spirits. We've been taking up multiple challenges all together. Now we're facing a tragedy. The war has come back to Europe after a peaceful decade. The war and its consequences always hit the workers first their livelihoods, their lives as a whole, and their working conditions. So we want to express solidarity and support to our Ukrainian friends and colleagues, and we want to protect peace and democracy. Then we're still facing the pandemic, and we have now to secure economic recovery. So the pandemic has had a huge economic impact, and it has really been like an alarm call for Europe and the whole world. It has made us wake up to the need to invest in healthcare, frontline workers, public services. ETUC has been proactively working to guarantee the minimization of the negative effects of this crisis on the workers, but also to seize the opportunity and show how important social Europe is important for the sustainability of the continent and the world. ETUC believes that the role of trade unions is essential at the European, national and regional level, and the success of the recovery of Europe after this crisis partly hinges on the trade unions. We've been working to strengthen social dialogue and collective bargaining. Within the ETUC, we're supporting a trade union campaign to put an end to austerity and to build an inclusive and sustainable growth. And we want to force a revision of the European Stability Pact. And we want to make sure the social protection systems are reinforced in order to offset the mistakes made in the past, because austerity has fostered an unfair and unequal economic growth from which companies, corporations have benefited, but not the workers. The trade unions and other social partners must take an active part in the recovery, the economic recovery, and also in the design and implementation of the national recovery and resilience plans. Social dialogue and collective bargaining are key to guarantee that recovery is a reality for all. The 2012 labor reform that took place in the framework of the austerity policies, well, it has been partly modified by putting limits to temp work and to insecure work, also to subcontracting. At the same time, certain mechanisms of collective bargaining have been restored, and the workers may benefit from it. But this legislative change has taken place after a social agreement in which the employers are a party. The green and digital transition has also a huge impact on our lives, and we have to be proactive there too. A transition towards a digital sustainable economy for a planet that doesn't leave anybody behind. They should be fair, and all the workers, especially those directly affected, should have decent opportunities for their future. Nobody must be left behind, but this cannot be only a slogan. We cannot only offer training and public support, public aid to those workers. They have to be offered decent work and decent wages and decent living conditions. The transition must take place by providing ample and broad access to information. We have to strengthen our social model, which has been very hit by multiple crises and cuts. We have to invest in public services, health services, making sure social protection schemes become universal. The rights and the protection should be extended to all the categories of workers. It is essential to support or to give an impulse to the new social contract, we need to take up the challenges of the future. Dear friends, the ETUC must be able to rely on you, and you can rely on me. I thank very much the USO for its active commitment and for their work within ETUC. All together, we can change Europe to make it better for all the workers. I wish you a very successful Congress. Thank you very much. We also got a message from the director of the ILO office in Spain, Mr. Felix Peinado. As official responsible for the ILO in Spain, I would like to greet the USO on the occasion of this 12th Confederal Congress. I would like to greet the leaders, the members, and all the delegates and all the people who take part in this Congress. And I wish you a very successful Congress. The COVID-19 pandemic has meant huge challenges, which have been added up to other challenges that were already that we were already facing, such as digitization, the fair transition, climate change, and the pandemic has further aggravated the inequalities, and it has stricken even stronger those who were already underprivileged in Europe. So the ILO has defined a roadmap for the economic recovery. And we think it is very important in that framework to strengthen the role of the trade union organizations and their tools to take up all these challenges. That is collective bargaining and the defense of the interests of their members. So I would like to really encourage you in your work in this Congress and also in your daily work, so you can help us reach the goals of ILO, which are decent work and universal health protection. I wish you a really successful Congress. Thank you very much. Somebody else who sent us a very nice message is the General Secretary of the Trade Union Confederation of America, South America, Mr. Rafael Freire. So on behalf of the CSA and the Trade Union Confederation of the Workers of the Americas, I would like to congratulate you, to congratulate all those of you who are present here to work for building a better future through a new social contract. We are in favor of a fully fledged development. We need social justice, economic justice, environmental justice, and we need to secure the defense of democracy. It is the reason why we promote decent work and the empowerment of the people. In order to encourage social changes. The Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations won't be reachable if we don't involve the workers. So, dear friends of USO, we need to improve our trade union action. We need to work all together. We need to join forces between the different continents in the strengthening of our trade union movement. We really hope that here in Latin America, where we are at the beginning of a time which will mark the defeat of the right wing and extreme right wing, like we see very good examples in Chile and Bolivia. and among other countries. And also, we hope in Brazil with the election of Lula. So we are full of hope, and we will keep working to improve the fate of the people and the workers of our continent. We're on the right track. So in April, we will get together in Latin America in an international seminar promoted by ITUC and the CSA, the Trade Union Confederation of the Americas. And I hope we can count on your participation. So I wish you well for your Congress.
Last but not least, we'll listen to the message from the General Secretary of the ITUC Africa, Kwasi Aduamankwa.
I bring you warm greetings from ITUC Africa on the occasion of renewed assurances of a friendship and solidarity between USO and its membership and ITUC Africa and its affiliates. As you celebrate the growth of your union and look to the revision of statutes in conformity with your needs, we salute your forthrightness and courage to raise critical issues that face workers and the labor movement in a quest for decent work and a life of dignity. From assessing the consequences of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the economic situation, in the context of the ecological and digital transformations, USO appears poised to examine the need for a productive transformation of progress and for an economic model that puts people, the planet, and the quality of employment at the center of political priorities. Your poster for Congress also calls for real and plural trade union democracy, for a more effective, transparent, and participatory trade unionism, for an end to discrimination, an effective protection of the right to form or join unions, for a wider coverage of collective bargaining, for inclusiveness, and the achievement of the pertinent voice of labor as a foremost representative of working people and society at large. We in ITUC Africa salute USO for your vision. On our part, as ITUC Africa, we affirm that the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic and the failed model of globalization have reinforced stark inequalities within African countries and exposed the gaping vulnerabilities facing workers and the majority of our populations. Our strategic response is to work for the strengthening of trade unions and cementing their bonds of friendship and unity, for the diligent pursuit of a rights-based approach to social dialogue as a means of addressing the fundamental challenges of industrialization and value addition, quality and productive employment, formalizing the informal economy, achieving social protection for all, and navigating the ecological and digital transitions. Now, turning to recent developments in Europe, ITUC Africa condemns the use of force in international relations, and we join the ITUC in condemning the war unleashed by the state of Russia against Ukraine and its people. We call for peace and a greater effort by world leaders to achieve a dialogue-based settlement of the issues that led to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We commend the outpouring of support for the victims of the war and the refugees from this unfortunate conflict. At the same time, we condemn the widely reported cases of racism and discriminatory treatment of Africans and other non-Europeans, including students. Time is now to strengthen the demand for a new social contract based on global security and a shared prosperity and rejection of a return to nationalism and a Cold War of strategic competition of imperialist forces. Global working class solidarity is essential now more than ever in addressing the challenges of peace and development that face the majority of the world's people. Once again, we salute USO on the occasion of its 12th Congress and look forward to the strengthening of our bonds of friendship and solidarity in the coming months and years. Mandla.
Right, having heard all these fraternal greetings, and we'll get, of course, other messages during the Congress. We have a letter from the General Secretary, Benito Lopez. Dear Joaquin, having got the invitation to attend the 12th Congress, I'm afraid I'm not able to come for personal reasons. Please give my greetings to all our friends, all the international participants, organizations, and guests. I encourage you to have a very good Congress in order to build greater trade union unity, carrying out its objectives, historical objectives. Nowadays, there are ultra-liberal and reactionary positions that challenge social and human rights as well as labor rights and citizen rights. It's important to have a democratic culture which is at risk of involution, and that is why the work of trade unions is essential to counteract that. So all the best wishes to the new Confederal Executive Committee. Unai Sordo, General Secretary of Comisiones Obreras, will address us. Good afternoon to all of you. Chairwoman and members of the Bureau, delegates, Joaquin, all friends of and representatives of different organizations, political parties, and Andalusian institutions. In the name of Comisiones Obreras, a fraternal greeting and the best wishes for this 12th Congress of the Unión Sindical Obrera, USO. I was talking with Joaquin, saying that it's now 4 years and 4 months after the 11th Congress in Santander. Who could have imagined what was going to happen in those next 4 years in Spain and the world? I think we might have thought it was a dystopia, a bad joke that would never happen. We're talking about 2018. We had left behind the consequences, job losses of the economic crisis, the inequalities of the financial and economic crisis, of 2008. And indeed the crisis produced by the austerity policies of 2010 onwards. And it was just only a year before a new pandemic arose, something that we had never imagined would happen. I don't think that anybody imagined that. And we were not clear how to face that challenge. And then after thousands and thousands of dead people, a terrible tragedy, a terrible situation wrecked by the pandemic. And finally, we thought that we're getting that behind, and now war, the intolerable invasion of Russia to Ukraine, and all these sanctions also lead together to a deep crisis. How long it will be, I don't know. But in any case, I think that all trade unions have the challenge to face those consequences, to protect the rights of our working people. I think that is a difficult situation. But this difficult situations teach us a few things and give us some perspective. Three points that I would like to underline. And I think that we can all share more or less together. First, in my view, this is the wreckage of neoliberal development model of the past 40 years. This neoliberal globalization process where economic power set up their own view of the economy concerning the comparative advantages throughout the world, taking into account some parties or some rather parts of the world that were much weaker and could not have a reaction against it. So that was a specific type of globalization, a model that is now broken and that we have to replace. I think that the pandemic also taught us that we didn't even know where to get mask, gel, or respiratory devices. And then we have the invasion of Ukraine. And now we are dependent on those energy sources, not just the periphery in Europe, but for instance, Germany, which means that this globalization model of 40 years cannot continue. This neoliberal model is also a way of understanding how companies should work. The outsourcing as outsourcing of risk and cost, shareholder value above workers' value. And there are huge sectors, including transport, that have been atomized, fragmented, trying to develop very, very small companies without much power and individual, so-called autonomous professionals. And now that we have this increase in fuels, they all have to turn to the state for support. The neoliberal approach, in the end, is always rescued by public funds. Second point in which I think there might be agreement. How important is working for fairer societies, but also more efficient societies. And for that, we need the public sector. With all the 130 billions that we have been using to save the economy, without the aids that the state is now providing, we would not have come out of the pandemic crisis, nor from this current one. So we have to defend work and the public sector, collective, fair tax systems. I think that this is a second element that we can all agree upon. Thirdly, history is not already written. the reconfiguration of societies as alternatives. On the one hand, the creation of a new social contract for 2000 and for the 21st century, or on the contrary, an even harsher society with privatization, individualization, competition will continue and deepen in a much more reactionary context. So the alternative, the only alternative, is a new social contract at European, at least, scale, that on top of the old social contract element has to education, health, and pension, has to add everything that has to do with the environment rights, with digitalization rights, with the need to have lifelong training and education for work, as well as care for people. I think that these items, three elements, count with great agreement amongst us. Those are the alternatives, and I'm sure that a trade union movement in Spain is clear what is the way to go. And this Congress, the USO, as well as the Comisiones Obreras and UGT and all the other trade union organizations, have to reflect and to try to carry measures to strengthen the presence of trade unions in companies, to strengthen trade union representatives' work, because we only have a more decent and fairer society if there is a strong trade union movement where democracy doesn't stop at the doors of the companies. And we are together in this. And in this we are together. Thank you very much. Thank you to you. Pepe Álvarez, General Secretary of Unión General de Trabajadores, UGT. Good afternoon. And thank you, Maria, thank you, Joaquin, for your invitation to take part in this Congress. Congresses of trade union organizations are important moments for those organizations because it helps reflecting on the situation, to analyze the past, and decide the way to the future. And I think that your Congress is taking place at a very important time. Of course, many moments are important, but I think that a few moments in a country and humanities history that we have a Congress just after this terrible events that we have witnessed in the last 3-4 years. We left behind somehow, we thought, the financial economic crisis. We thought that we were going to fulfill the obligation of sharing wealth created by companies to ensure welfare for the majority of citizens. And then we were hit by the pandemic. And then we had to try to solve the serious problems that that pandemic created. And when we thought that we're going to leave the pandemic behind, and therefore start just really thinking about the future. Putin has the idea of invading Ukraine. My friends, I think that trade union has to go beyond the daily urgencies. We have to analyze how things are, why things are, and what is to be done to change things in Spain, in Europe, in the planet. Someone said that globalization is broken. And indeed, it is broken because that globalization was thought exclusively for its own sake. When the economy only works for its own interest, is not or no longer in the interest of the citizens that make it happen. And that is why we have to try and guarantee globally, if possible, that things change. Not led by markets, but by citizens. And perhaps from Europe, and if not from Europe, from Spain, how to guarantee our citizens at least a minimum welfare to survive.
We thought we had seen everything with the pandemic, but we thought we have seen all the gaps in the system. And all of a sudden, we have the invasion of Ukraine. And we didn't expect this. We thought that we had seen everything of that unfair globalization at the service of the owners of the capital. But no. And we will have to work all together in the international organizations, in the ETUC, in the ITUC. We will have to make proposals to work on for this new social and environmental future in order to give hope for the future of humankind. We need to keep working to build a fair world without exploitation. But we need, before we can work internationally, we need to do that in Spain. We need to do that at home. And I expect from this Congress of USO proposals that will help us move forward, make progress, and respond to the most urgent needs. From the point of view of UGT, we have been making progress, but we have still a long way to go. We have this immediate challenge of restoring collective bargaining. We need to maintain and secure the rise in wages to help workers cope with this unfettered inflation. We have seen how minimum wages, interprofessional minimum wages, has been filling part of the wages gap between men and women. But we see that women keep being discriminated against in our country. They are on the lowest rings of the wages ladder. So we have to keep learning, because if the crisis has shown something, has taught us something, it is that being humble is essential. We must be ready to learn and listen. And it's only in that way that we will be able to build a fairer society. So we need to secure the success of our actions. We need to be successful. We need that to be able to face the future. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Thank you, Pepe. Now we're going to read the letter that we were sent by Miguel Borra, the president of the CESIS trade union. Dear Joaquin, I would like to wish you the best for the Congress of USO. As you know, we are going through very difficult times. In 15 years, Spain has been facing 3 crises that have caused a crash of our economic system and have impoverished thousands of families. Now, the economic crisis, then the pandemic, and now the energy crisis, with rising prices of raw materials together combined with the war in Ukraine. So this is leading to a crisis of values in which our democracies and our social systems are being put into question. The trade unions are also being put into question. And events like this one should help us claim the role we have to play as leading organizations of civil society. We are organizations of workers. The workers are always the lowest rung ring of the ladder that is suffering the dearest consequences of the crisis. We wish you the best for your Congress and the years to come, because there is a lot to do. So we would like to greet Mr. Xavi Ansa, the training secretary of the ELA trade union from the Basque country. And we would also like to welcome José Luis Rivera, the Secretary of International Affairs of the SIG trade union. For personal reasons, he has not been able to join us, so we would like to say hello to him from this sharing table. And now we would like to give the floor to Joaquín Pérez, our Secretary General. So I would like to thank you, to thank all our guests who have made great efforts to be able to be with us. And some of our guests have been traveling a whole day only to spend some time with us in this Congress. Well, we are having this Congress 4 months late. The Confederal Council decided to delay it due to the COVID situation. The Confederal Council also decided to reduce the number of delegates to guarantee security distances. To all the people who are with us and those who are not really physically with us but who have joined us online, a very warm greeting. But many people are missing, and even though you may not be here, you are very much in our thoughts. Also to all those who have been involved in the different democratic pre-Congress phases, to all the members, the leaders and officials who have built and agreed on everything that we have to finish working on here, thank you very much. So the founding charter of USO, approved and published in 1961, it is more than 60 years old, sets out the main lines that define USO. I would like to underline these values, these principles that have brought us up to now. It is, well, first of all, a profound humanism, which encourages to consider the workers to be the central figures in all areas. There is also our unwavering commitment to freedom and democracy. It was particularly important during the times of the dictatorship, but it has been ongoing and it has become a commitment to the struggle for a society with trade union and political liberties, with democratic pluralism and social justice. And also a trade unionism based on the capacity of the working class to organize itself, relying on the foundations of internal democracy, autonomy, and independence. It is our DNA. And this is how our history is unfolded on these foundations. So more than 60 years after the publication of our founding charters, the 12th Confederal Congress of the USO begins in loyalty to our identity and history and with the renewal of our trade union projects. So thanks to the work of us all, of you all, we are here in the 12th Congress with a consolidated USO as the third trade union force in our country. And after some recent years of significant membership growth of more than 7%. So I could give you examples of heroic actions that have been taken, especially during the last 25 months. So we have now 95% of the entire organization financed by our own resources, 95% of USO. That means our freedom. So we are here after many complicated years with a lot of work and a lot of labor and judicial conflicts, demonstrations and strikes. We have had to face an increase in anti-union practices. And I would like to do something that has never been done in any Congress, but maybe it's already been done, but I'm not so old, I've not seen everything. So well, I would really like to pay tribute to the work of those essential workers who have never stopped meeting our needs, those who have been delivering things to our homes, selling us food, and enabling us to survive during these terrible times. There is a certain current of public opinion that is always seems to be always trying to criticize trade unionists. But I would like to give a big hand to all those who have kept fighting despite the pandemic, to all those who have kept fighting for our rights and for the workers' rights during the whole very difficult time of the pandemic. Well, the motto of this Congress has been repeated many times, and that's why we have chosen it. We don't want to be mere witnesses of what is happening. We do not want to let the apparently grim reality make us despondent. We want to state very clearly, loud and clear, that changes are possible, and we need to work in order to bring these changes about. Many new chapters will open up, and building a future, we want to build a future, indeed a future with hope, because changes are possible. Building a future towards the necessary decent employment with stable, solid rights, which will allow the development of decent life projects, which will lead to progress and contribute to the common good and to society as a whole. Our country cannot go on with the current disastrous employment data it has, especially with the very high youth unemployment figures, or the chronic job insecurity, nor can it continue to be as weak as it is. We want to build a future in which dismissals become more difficult, regulated, and expensive for employers, to make sure that temporary or part-time work is no longer so easy, free, and cheap, and stops being the dominant trend. We want to work for the return of powers to the Labour Authority, for the strengthening of the Labour Inspectorate, and the end of fraud in its many different forms. We need to secure the adoption of more rational working timetables that promote a better balance between personal and family life and work, more in line with the other countries of the European Union. For an end to incentives to insecure hiring, for the rethinking of our active employment policies that have been so bad and so useless. We want to promote stable and decent work. We know that many of our contracts don't even last for 1 week. We want to put an end to that. We want to change the system of skilling and reskilling. We want to build a future where there is a vocational training system that targets the labor market needs, building a future towards sustainable development and a just transition, without so many people left behind. We want to build a future for a welfare state with tax justice, high quality public services, education and training for all, universal health and care, robust social protection, and constitutionally protected pensions that cannot be touched. We have been for so long in a crisis, or rather that there are people who have never seen a day without a crisis of some kind. So we want really to work hard for a socially fairer world. Our world is great in many regards, but it has huge fault lines and challenges. We want to fight for equality and inclusion, access to housing for young people who are the ones who have been paying the highest price in recent years, a future without so much speculation that it does so much harm to all citizens, with policies in favor of people and committed to a future of greater energy autonomy, with the capacity to contain prices that protects us from economic situations that affect the productive fabric, employment, and especially the most vulnerable, with a new social contract that focuses all policies on people. And of course, we want to keep building honest, effective, and proactive trade unions with values. We want to keep strengthening collective bargaining everywhere in order to tackle the widespread loss of purchasing power and to underpin stability with healthy and secure employment. We want to keep serving workers in every workplace, in every union section, and in every headquarters in the most committed way possible. We want to keep developing our trade union model with pride, our independent, supportive, free, and pluralistic class struggle trade unionism. And we start this Congress in our own style, with a modest, simple, but dignified event. And we want to start this Congress by thanking everybody, as always, together, closely united, knit by our values and principles, with ambition. We have been able to go through bad times together. There is still a lot to do and build. We have to further improve our organization. And we will have to work a lot after this Congress. There is a lot to do. There is a lot to build. Let's start our 12th Congress. Let's start our trade union project. Long live the Unión Sindical Obrera. Long live USO.
Thank you, Joaquin. Well, we can have now a 10-minute break. Just a second before you leave. You have to go through the door on the left and come back through it as well. And I remind you that you can recycle cans and other things at the entrance. That is all for the moment. 10-minute break.